Hi, everybody. Welcome. Let's get started. Total markets. Dow Jones is down 0.8% because of UNH. Nasdaq is up 0.3%. S&P 500 is up 0.7%. Russell 2000 up 1%. If you have any audio issues, please let me know on X or YouTube. We're going to read the article. We're going to keep it slow today and short. Earlier today, we had housing starts coming lower than expected, materially lower than expected, actually. Permits are up slightly, but who knows if those permits will um, move on to starts and then units with all the uncertainty. Initial claims came in lower than expected. Continuing claims were higher than last week at 1.9. So no change on initial claims. Housing starts are lower. Oil prices are higher today by 3.5% to $65 per barrel. And the yield curve is higher as well. The yield curve is up about 5-6 basis points, especially on the longer end, which is a problem for the economy. 10-year Treasury yield is up 0.33, 4.33%, and 30-year Treasury yield is up. On Thursday, assets weighed in progress in trade negotiations with Japan against concerns about monetary policy outlook. While a slump in United Healthcare health shares weighed on the Dow, investors found some optimism from US President Donald Trump's comments on big progress in trade talks with Japan after steep losses on Wednesday, but an early recovery quickly fizzled out. The Reuters, meanwhile, United Healthcare plunged 23% and weighed on the blue chip Dow after the insurer lowered its annual profit forecast on expectations of medical costs for the rest of the year. Other health insurance slumped, with CVS down 2.5% and Humana falling 7%. Focus will be on tariff negotiation talks with dozens of countries over the coming weeks for more clarity on the size and scope of tariffs on individual nations and sectors. The market could change at any moment. Everyone's guessing right now as to what's going on to transpire as far as tariffs are concerned, said Tom Bruce, macro investment strategist. Wall Street had extended losses on Wednesday after U.S. Fed President Chair Jerome Powell warned Trump's trade policies risked pushing inflation higher while weakening economic growth, adding policymakers needed more clarity before adjusting policy. Trump hit back on Thursday, saying in a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, that Powell's determination cannot come fast enough, and calling for the Fed to cut rates. It's been known that Trump hasn't been happy with Powell. Traders have scaled back bets on May rate cut to about 10%, according to CME's FedWatch, while the Reuters poll showed economists see a higher probability of recession in the next 12 months. On the day, however, data showed weekly jobs claims came in lower than expected, suggesting labor markets remain stable. Ahead of the long weekend, all three major Wall Street indices are on track for their third weekly decline in 4, with the S&P 500 on pace to lose about 1.5% after its best week since November 2023. Alphabet dropped 1.5% after a federal judge ruled Google illegally dominated two markets for online advertising technology. Eli Lilly rose 14% after drug maker said its experimental pill led to weight loss of nearly 8% and lowered blood sugar in type 2 diabetes patients. A 3% gain in the energy index also supported S&P 500. Netflix shares rose 1.3%. So Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that these Trump tariffs um, are not yet in the economy, even though some people have pulled forward their purchases, especially car purchases. But the full impact will be realized over the coming year, and inflation will go up. That's what the treasury market is pricing in. And the Fed isn't coming to the rescue, which is exactly what we discussed here for many weeks now. The Fed isn't going to cut in May, and it's actually questionable if they're going to cut in June too. So right now, the markets are expecting a cut in June by an overwhelming majority, and it's possible that that may not come either. So that would be back-to-back punches for the bulls. The probability of a rate cut in May is now down to 7%. It was as high as 50%, 60% a couple of weeks ago. And now the June cut probability is 66%, and 5% of that 66% is a 50 base point cut. So, I mean, unless something changes, I it's possible that even the June cut is not going to come. So, um, we're going to get more earnings next week. I expect almost all managements to blame their deteriorating fundamentals on Trump tariffs, even if though it's too early, just like Nvidia did. And I think the economy is on the verge of a recession. I think we're going to see in the back half of this year rising unemployment rate, and but we'll see how fast Trump um, walks back his tariff nonsense. All right. Um, I actually wanted to read this article on UNH2 real quick, if you all have time. Let's see what that's about. Why they missed so badly. Oh, the talk about removing Powell, terminating Powell, is a huge risk for the economy. And then another risk is if Scott Bessent resigns, I think this whole thing comes out really fast. And there's a possibility that Scott Bessent might resign. He didn't say so, but if you watch Larry Summers, so I'll pin Larry's um, thread at the top of our screens. Larry makes a really good argument why Scott Bessent should resign, and he's really the only person that makes any sense when he talks. So at the top of our screens, Larry Summers' thread. You can read through it. Larry Summers says any self-respecting Treasury Secretary would resign rather had the department be complicit in the weaponization of the IRS against the political adversary of the president. Harvard will endure, and it is far, far from perfect. But if this directive is not withdrawn, the administration will have taken another substantial step away from the rule of law and democracy. Scott Bessent is derelict with respect to what may be his most important duty. Doge violating rules, eviscerating of enforcement capacity, and politicization of leadership, and now political intrusion into a specific taxpayer status. The result will be revenue losses of $1 trillion or more over the next decade. The erosion of American democracy has costs that cannot be priced. George Shultz met his test by facing down President Nixon when his staff tried to interfere with the IRS. Tragic that Scott Bessent has not protected the IRS. Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a possibility that I mean, I think deep down, I think Scott Bessent is a reasonable person, and he sees through this nonsense. That's why he tries to walk the administration off of a ledge with tariff wars. But we'll see if he ends up resigning. And with that, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your extended weekends, and I will chat with you all next time. Take care.